Hi guys! So I decided to do a little bit of a different kind of video for day 10 of Dancemas. I thought I'd be telling you guys a little bit about some dance story times. These are all stories that have happened to me, or at least somebody that I knew. Okay, so I will be doing my skincare while doing this. I just got out of the shower, and let's get into it. Okay, so the first story time comes from the first day that I was at my new dance studio. So I remember this day very, very well because I was so nervous, but I actually knew one girl already who went there and who was in my group, but we were never really friends. Like, we used to be when we were younger, but then because of COVID, like, we just kind of like never really got, like, we were never really friends again. We were just kind of acquaintances at my other studio, and then she danced here and she told me about it, so I decided to join her. And yeah, so anyways, we were practicing at the bar, and then the teacher stops at her, gets so mad, and literally yells, "I'm not speaking Chinese, I'm speaking English. Can you guys not understand?" So this one was when we were about to go to competition. It was like before we were about to travel for a competition, and basically the dance teacher was just kind of explaining the rules, like no vaping, no doing drugs, you're representing the dance school, like, you know, when we go places, so please behave nicely. Don't do this at the hotel, don't do that. You know, she was just kind of explaining it, making sure we knew everything to bring and what not to bring. And while she's explaining this, one of the girls is like actively bleeding. So then the dance teacher finally finishes up and she's like, "Okay, I'm done. Does anybody have any questions?" Nobody raises their hand, and then the girl raises her hand and very politely says, "Oh, I'm sorry, do you have a band-aid?" The dance teacher flips out. She's like, "Wow, I love how you're not listening to anything that I said." She walks over to the first aid kit, hands her a band-aid, and then she's like, ugh. So then, like, we all leave, and she's literally like crying as she leaves, and I felt so bad. I was like, oh my gosh, like, what the heck? There was no need to be that rude. Okay, so if you guys know anything about Ukrainian dance, you guys will know that there are typically a lot less guys than girls in the dance, unless it's like super duper popular and like big dance studios. A lot of the time, realistically, there's only like one guy for every like 2 or 3 girls in the actual group, because dance is seen as like a very like feminine thing, I would say, even though it's so obvious. Like, guys can obviously do dance, and dance isn't necessarily made for like one gender, but a lot of the time it is mostly girls doing it, and I think that that's not just Ukrainian dance. But anyways, besides my point. So once in my old studio, we actually had a good amount of guys. There were only 2 more girls than guys, so we were like, oh, okay, that's actually not that bad. Well, for one of our Hutzal dances, Hutzal is a region of Ukraine, by the way, they decided that they wanted us to do a lift, which is all fine and dandy, except for the girls were a lot older than the guys, because they needed to pull guys up from the lower age group in order to get the amount of guys that they would need. So essentially what some places will do is the girls have to be, say, like 14 to 15, but the guys can be 11 to however old, right? Because they need more guys. And there was a really big problem with that, because Ukrainian guys, from my experience, are either really short or really tall, and there's like no in between. So a lot of the guys were super duper short, and because girls typically grow more than guys, a lot of them were super duper tall. So they were trying to put 5'5" girls with like 4'8" boys, and it just wasn't working. And I'll show you guys the lift a little bit. Hold on. So basically, right, the guys would be standing in a circle facing the outside of the circle, and they're holding hands. So imagine like one guy on this side, one guy on this side, they're holding hands, and then the girl has to sit down on top of their hands together. Well, the issue was that you also had to put your hands on their shoulders and like lift yourself up, so you're taking off a bit of the weight from their hands. And the problem was, the way that we got into the lift, we would essentially be with a different guy every time we ran the dance, so you didn't know who was your final partner or not until you like just do it. So at this point, I had kind of told my dance teacher already. I was like, look, I'm super duper uncomfortable doing this. So every time that we had to do it, I would essentially just jump off and not do the lift because I was so scared. And my dance teacher was like, oh, well, why aren't you doing it? Is it because you just don't want to do it, or is it because you're uncomfortable doing it? And I said, no, like, I'm not trying to be a brat. I'm just so uncomfortable doing this because, like, at that point, I was like super insecure. And because I wasn't the tallest girl in the class, they gave me to one of the shorter guys. And so essentially most of the time I would end up with a shorter guy, which wasn't as strong. And I'm like, sir, you could barely pick up a pencil. What are you doing trying to carry me? But yeah, at that point I was like super insecure, honestly. And so I said to my dance teacher, I was like, no, like I'm really, really uncomfortable with this. And she's like, oh, well, you'll be fine by the time we get on stage. Well, that did not work out. Literally the next time that she made me do it, I ended up with the two shortest guys. Keep in mind, there's no way that these guys were over like 4'7", and I was around 5'4", 5'5", which is where I basically still am. Now I'm like, okay, I don't want to do this, but I'm like, okay, like I can't get my dance teacher to be mad at me. That's not what I'm about to do. Fine, I'm just gonna have to do this. Well, I tried my best, y'all, but they literally dropped me on my butt. And so at this point I'm like, oh hell no, I'm never doing this again. Like I'm not doing this. And everybody's like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, are you okay? And I'm like literally basically crying, and I'm like, I'm okay. And they're like, your face is turning really red. And I was like, I'm just laughing because it's so funny. Totally. Yeah, so it's safe to say that I was not put in that lift because there were two like more girls than there were guys, so essentially they took me out of that because yeah, but let's just say I would have jumped off on stage too, like you best believe. Okay, so next up is a time that I specifically remember. I think I was either in grade 2 or 3, and essentially it was like in my dance class, and I remember one of the teachers saying like, oh, suck in your tummies, ladies, like we don't want to see your dinner, or we don't want to see your lunch. It was either dinner or lunch, I forget which one. And I was like, oh. And at the time I didn't think much of it because it was like I was hearing those things a lot, but like looking back on it, I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have been saying those kinds of things to like 8-year-olds. Low-key, that's probably why I didn't want to do the lift. Like, that's what caused these issues. Like, wait, hear me out, it's all tying back together. But in all seriousness though, although I find some of the things like in this video really crazy, I absolutely love my dance studio and like my former one and all of that. I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm so grateful to be dancing there, and they're honestly the majority of the time it's a really positive, amazing place. I love all the girls there. And yeah. Please don't take this as me like hating on my studio or something. These are just like funny moments, and like also when I'm saying like, oh, you shouldn't say that, I'm like, keep in mind like I'm joking about these things. Like I'm not actually like mad at these teachers for saying this, because you also have to remember that this is dance and they do what they have to do to teach you something, right? Like if it means like yelling at you to make you remember it, then I guess that's what you have to do. I'm not offended by any of the things that happen in this video, and it's also totally fine, okay? Anyways, so yeah, take that with a grain of salt. But anyways, I'm done. I also did want to say that I normally don't do this much skincare, like, at all. This is only for the video, and yeah. But anyways, guys, I love you all so much, and I will see you all next time. Bye!